Namaskar and welcome to DGI with Sri and Sri. Today is the 12th of September and this is episode number 243. Here are the main points. The target of US drone launch was not an ISIS terrorist but an US aid worker and his family. They were not missiles but water bottles in his truck. Israel and Hamas skirmishes continue with a rocket launch and the IDF launching airstrikes. India to develop 19 more emergency landing facilities across the country. And we begin by showing you a clip of Biden's latest press conference. Can we have the video, please?
We also saw something all too rare, a true sense of national unity. Unity and resilience, the capacity to recover and repair in the face of trauma. Unity and service. The 9/11 generation stepping up to serve and protect in the face of terror, to get those terrorists who are responsible, to show everyone seeking to do harm to America that we will hunt you down and we will make you pay. And that will never stop, today, tomorrow, ever, from protecting America. Yet we also witness the darker forces of human nature. Fear and anger, resentment and violence against Muslim Americans, true and faithful followers of a peaceful religion. We saw national unity bend.
In global news, the world mourns September 11th as we complete the 20th anniversary of that fateful day. While Biden focused on strength and unity, Boris Johnson asserted that terrorists cannot shake off Western values. In Afghanistan, it's poignant that the organization responsible is back in power with many holding key portfolios. The target of the US drone launch was not an ISIS terrorist, but an US aid worker and his family. They were not missiles, but water bottles in his truck. Sridharji, what do you make of this? 9/11 always brings back very sad memories. I'm sure you were in US at that time, sir. But it's ironic, isn't it, that the very organization that caused all this trouble is back in power now.
Indeed. Good morning to everybody, and we're looking forward to another kind of a great show. As we kick off, I think you saw the video being played out. Yes, Sriji, I think two decades, and 9/11 always is very, very regrettable and brings back, for those who were there and those who witnessed and those who were distant, but yet it's a reflection of unthinkable, but that occurred. For me personally, I was there very much just a block away, and 3.5 to 4 hours of most arduous time as we navigated that particular morning and into the afternoon, and then it went on to last not for months as well as couple of years after, as we witnessed day in and day out the unfolding scenes as we came to work. I think Mr. Biden gave a very poignant or a very appropriate speech relevant to the moment and relevant to the day. Most notable that he always, as they do, they cite examples from people who lived and who suffered the losses. Obviously, strength, don't be afraid, courage and conviction, and we are more united than before were some of the words that he spelled out. He also made it a point to refer to the fact that one of the communities, the Muslim or the Islamic community, was singled out, and the community which he called it as one representing a peaceful religion. We need to see how it gets played out from an emotion point of view, because right now Mr. Biden is not having a very credible view in terms of this whole management of the exit as well as the events that have unfolded since then. Now, the most important comment came from his counterpart in Britain, who Britain has always been a shoulder-to-shoulder ally of United States, who said that terrorists, the world has asserted, the terrorists cannot shake off the Western values. The values prevail, whatever they try and do, the Western values prevail, rather than making a very telling remark about the Taliban coming back and notwithstanding their promises, showing what is to come by way of suppression of rights and so on. Already we are hearing the journalists being beaten up and women folk being asked to go back home, etc. But I think they will do it in a very much more calibrated way. So those were some of the thoughts that as you listen to the video and as we spent another 9/11, post 20 years. And to your point, sir, yes, nobody would have expected the regime that was targeted on this war against terror will be back in power and witnessing this event on this day.
And let's move on. China promises to raise imports from ASEAN ahead of the inauguration of rail link to Laos. Raising defense budgets and preparing for confrontation with China based on the policies of Japanese prime ministerial candidates, the US Navy asserts to the Chinese that it has long followed the rules and policies of global open and free maritime rules long before the Chinese even had a navy. US, Korea, and Japan to meet over North Korea nuclear standoff. Sridharji, the usual saber rattling, or is there more that needs to be read into this?
Well, I think I just want to touch on one point before we transition into the Asian news. The target, if you recall, President Biden post the suicide attack that took 13 lives, 13 American soldiers, and close to 200 other Afghan civilians. He made a point that they have targeted an ISIS terrorist group, and contrary to his statement, it turns out that it was a U.S. aid worker. That again has not gone down very well. Another mistake on the part of the administration, close on the heels of the whole raft of things that went wrong. Getting to China, which is namely, is it a saber rattling? It's I think on the U.S. Navy side, U.S. is saying, don't come and preach to us. Our Navy has existed long before you guys even had anything called as Navy in your arsenal. So follow the rules of the game, but don't preach to us. I think it's a most compelling as well as most assertive statement that we have seen from the United States, any part of the administration ever since China has been raising its propaganda post Biden's takeover. So I think I would say that is much needed and much warranted on the U.S. side with regard to this new maritime security laws that China is attempting to enforce. As far as the ASEAN is concerned, they are been building here and there. As you all know, that Cambodia and Myanmar is considered to be closer to China by virtue of the historical communistic regimes that are prevalent in those two countries, but more specifically Cambodia. So there is a rail link that is coming from the adjacent Chinese province all the way into Laos. And so China is offering a temptation. It's called as the carrot. It's offering a carrot, which is effectively to say, hey, work with us and be part of us, and we'll be offering you, we'll be buying lots of stuff from you. So there is a very good possibility for enhancing our bilateral trade and security, most importantly the trade, so which will enrich all the ASEAN nations. This is typically the way China comes in. Once you get hooked, that's it. Then you become part of the system. It remains to be seen how the various nations respond. But this rail link, very similar to what we have seen in the north, in the Himalayan region, is one more axis that China is trying to establish into the South China. South China is the sea. This is the land route via the rail link that they are building all the way into Laos. As far as the North Korea is concerned, it has been saber rattling, and there was just a couple of days ago, there was apparently a night parade that was conducted, and the exact events are still murky. So US has responded by saying it's time that the US, Korea, and Japan meet to put out any tremors that is likely to come out from North Korea.
And Europe continues its internal debates over Afghan refugees resettlement. So this is like, history playing itself over and over. When the Syrian crisis erupted, Europe said, okay, we welcome the refugees without doing much of vetting. We don't know what exactly happened. They are still indigesting or digesting those things. And now there is another wave that might come through. If the Afghan refugees are refused by Europe, does that mean that US will have to take more?
Well, US is continuing to take more. It's not taking less because there's a number of people who worked with US during that period of 20 years. It is believed that the number could be anything from 200 to 300 or 400,000 people who have worked both in the embassy but around the various logistical and other support areas, providing various kinds of support capabilities. At least in the number that we know now of, and numbers are not the best, what can I say, metric that comes out of the present administration. There's close to about 95,000 that is being taken. You're talking in Europe numbers such as 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Now we have clearly the Eastern Bloc led by Czech Republic has stated that they do not want any refugees from Afghanistan. There's enough here already creating instability. Now, this specific, there is now a debate going on in Italy because Italy has been asked to take. Italy already has from the African continent through the Mediterranean, the refugees coming in, streaming in. It is saying we can have cultural integration, and creating infrastructure is not feasible. Remember, Turkey, Iran, and Pakistan, the three Islamic nations which naturally align, have declined to take any further refugees because they say that they are flooded with more than 2 to 3 million refugees and can't afford to take any further refugees. Now, again, this is, we covered this in our fireside chat with the former Minister of State for External Affairs of India. It begs the question, which is, if Taliban is to establish a very stable and an orchestrated, inclusive administration, why would people need to leave Afghanistan? It's a fundamental question. They're supposed to keep the people there. 20 years of money has gone in. 20 years of reforms have gone in. This is not like warmonged states. 20 years of stability prevailed in Afghanistan. And why these refugees need to be, hundreds of thousands of people need to get out, or tens of thousands of people need to get out? It's a fundamental question, sir.
Israel and Hamas skirmishes, I beg your pardon, Israel and Hamas skirmishes continue with a rocket launch and IDF launching airstrikes. In US news, as Biden announces vaccine mandates, many states and businesses see it as unconstitutional and will fight it in courts. No vaccine mandates for illegals making their way, and the Afghan refugees are only for citizens. States complaining about toxic work culture growing between vaccinated and unvaccinated. We have a quick video to show you.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power. Just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide. I'll do everything in my power as the President of the United States to encourage people to do the right thing, and when they do it, demonstrate that it matters. That's why I said in my inaugural speech, I'm going to ask people to commit for 100 days to wear a mask. Not because I'm asking it for any reason to punish. This is not a political issue. It's become one. But if people do it for 100 days, in the middle of what will be still a raging crisis, and the vaccine is able to be distributed, they're going to see deaths drop off the edge. They're going to see hundreds of thousands of people not getting sick. And my hope is they'll be then inclined to say, okay, it's worth the patriotic duty to go ahead and protect other people. Thank you all so very much.
So this was a speech he made towards the end of 2020. Sridharji, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that he has now, over the weekend, he has passed a law mandating that everybody should be vaccinated, and it is compulsory. close to 100 million people are going to become part of this mandate. That he's now imposing businesses which have employed more than 100 people to be compliant with this specific law. So company which has more than 100 people, they must only allow people who are vaccinated. And what they are going to do with the unvaccinated, it's still unclear what the specific actions are. But they're saying, you want to come back to work, you should be vaccinated. There's also a possibility that is contemplated that if you're not vaccinated, you may not be allowed to do domestic travel. So it has met with furor from businesses. It has met with furor from the governments, and already you can see a few states ready to go to the courts to fight Mr. Biden on this specific item, which is mandating the vaccination to the US citizens, while allowing all the illegals surging through the borders to come in untested, unvaccinated, unmasked. And what exactly is the procedure for making sure that these people get vaccinated? Unknown. Where are they going to be located? Only they know where they are, what the exact process is. So you have a dichotomy between those who are living in the United States and versus those who are being brought in this surreptitious manner. So this is another thing that is being taken up by some of the governments which are some of the states which are badly impacted, to say why this discriminatory policy and why you have two sets of policies. All this means it doesn't augur very well for United States as we look ahead in terms of containing the virus or in terms of managing the system with this unfortunate policy.
And Fauci has no firm answers on why those who recovered from COVID should be vaccinated. So there is this, they're not very sure what is going on. So we leave it at that. The Texas Attorney General joins Florida and other states to sue school districts that mandate masks. Sridharji, does anyone know whether the mask helps or hinders?
No. And you can see for yourself that Mr. Biden said he only wants them to wear for first 100 days, only 100 days of his presidency. We are now well past the 100 days of his presidency. So when does this 100 days start? We don't know. So the states are saying, don't mandate people to, if they're following social distancing. Nobody has complained about social distancing and keep maintaining a distance, managing a distance, people self-quarantining, etc. in the event of post-testing to be found. So all those things people are willing to follow. But everybody should be wearing a mask to come in and do things is what people are opposing. And the other thing being, of course, the vaccination, which we covered. And is there any evidence that points out that by you doing one way versus the other way, there's any change? The answer is no. For example, let me say, if you're living in a tall building where you have about 500 families or 400 families, the thing passes through any kind of virus travels through the aircon systems. So the question that is asked is, should they be wearing masks inside the house, or should they be wearing masks, not wearing the mask inside the house, because there is a propagation of the virus in these kinds of systems? There's no answer given. In fact, some of the buildings in New York is now beginning to mandate that you got to wear even masks inside the house, in the event the Delta continues to rise. Remember, United States has close to 9 million active cases out of total 40 million. You all can do the numbers. What is the average active relative to the total number of cases in the United States?
The Afghan refugee flights take a pause with detection of measles and other challenges. In US bases where the refugees are temporarily housed, refugee challenges persist with many not validated and tested. Sridharji, we are also hearing of a bizarre incident that took place. Could you share that with our audience, please?
Yes, the bizarre incident that took place in one of the bases where you have these refugees. It is alleged that some of them took Uber and escaped. So the question is, these are refugees who are supposed to have come, with almost anything they could find, barely surviving, getting on a plane. How they landed in United States, got into a base, and how they could order a Uber and escape from, or manage to make an exit from the base and take an Uber and get off to a location. Obviously, all these facts mean that there is something which is, topsy turvy, or which is which is inconsistent with the reality. Unless there is data that we are not aware of. But escaping in Uber from one of these locations really is something to contemplate and worry about, not just purely from the COVID, but the security risk that it poses. If these guys happen to be bad boys, then we have trouble looming within the country.
And rising prices, low employment, and COVID-19 active cases puts a dampener on the $3.5 trillion budget, with many dissenters emerging. House GOP members summon Yellen to question on the billions of dollars of undistributed rental assistance. Sridharji, this is now taking a bit of a backseat here, the $3.5 trillion budget. Then there's also the infrastructure plan. Can you help us understand the priorities? Which one do you think is going to get first, and then which one is going to follow?
If you talk to sane people on either parties, either GOP or Republicans or Democrats, they will tell you, let us first get the infrastructure bill. Let's get the $546 billion. Let's begin to focus on those programs that create jobs, and those programs that are directed towards specific activities: bridges, airports, tunnels, trains, whatever the broadband infrastructure, enhancing those facilities that is in that 546. Let's put the money, let's get that into action. We recognize there may be some, bridges or some breakages that they're directed towards specific programs. That's the priority. But Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer will have no way. They want to have climate accord. They want to have this universal social welfare program, expansion of Medicare, expansion of Medicaid, normalization of the benefits. Everything that is under the roof and the sun is possibly part of this integrated plan. They do not want it to be excluded for the fear that it will not meet the progressive agenda, and it will not meet Biden's broad economic plan for his term, which is borrow and distribute and figure out a way by which you can tax people, and tax people in many ways to fund the budget. So if you ask me prioritization, the prioritization is infrastructure. If you ask Nancy Pelosi, she wants everything, including voting rights as well as the election laws, to be part of this bill.
And let's take a quick look at India news now. Collapse of consumption and return to labor of agroeconomics is a policy failure, says West Bengal finance minister. Sridharji, West Bengal, of course, is being ruled by Trinamool Congress, which is in the opposition, and they will always try and find some faults. What is the reality, sir?
The reality is, I think it's important that we're trying to point out that Dr. Ashok Mitra, I think is a very fairly, renowned figure from an economics point of view. But it also tells you the bereft of thinking here, which is namely, only when you have an economy that returns to normal post-pandemic, you will see broad set of activities spreading across the sphere of the country. And India is a major contributor is services sector. Services sector comprises of hotels, restaurants, and other types of activities which are adjacent to even manufacturing. So there's a fine calibration that is going on, and we have covered this. The core sectors, such as the manufacturing industrial sectors, have shown progress. The agricultural sector has seen progress. There's been a 14 to 15% growth in the agricultural. The merchandise exports has shown, because you produce, you take it to the ports, and the consumption happens outside. They have achieved $162 billion on a target of $400 billion that they have set out. which is on a $3 trillion economy or a $3.1 trillion economy, that contributes about 8% of the GDP. Close to 14% of the GDP. So therefore, I think that it is being well orchestrated and well directed from a balancing point of view to achieve the target growth of 10% GDP growth this year relative to the contraction that occurred close to 8% last year, last financial year. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is that even the most noted economists take a political statement and saying that people are going back to agro when agro is contributing to the economy is little hollow in my view. And it's time that people should, at least in an economic context, forget the political policies, in the economic context, they should be saying and speaking the right numbers rather than taking political punts.
And India's industrial production grew 11.5% in August. India's foreign exchange reserves crossed 642 billion. India and Australia will hold 2+2 dialogue with wide-ranging topics from Afghanistan to China to trade to security in agenda. India to develop 19 more emergency landing facilities across the country. Sridharji, this infrastructure is happening at a frenetic pace. I think India is really getting ready to face any kind of exigencies from an external source. But what about the internal problems, sir? There are states like Tamil Nadu who are blatantly talking anti-national crap.
Yeah, I think, in fact, the point that you're making is very valid. It's the first time we are in Daily Global Insights highlighting that India is building an alternate infrastructure for emergency landing, recognizing that preparing themselves that there is a potential looming security threat to the country from external forces, be it via terrorists or be it via an aggressive nation like China, less so of Pakistan, but who knows now, armed with all the American weaponry. So they are building capabilities which gives them contingency measures such as the emergency landing facilities. That means they're making the national highways, which have all improved during the last 5-6 years, capabilities for some of those highways to be used for emergency landing and takeoff of any type of planes should airports be attacked. I think it's a much needed effort. Many of the ASEAN countries, most notably country like Singapore, has similar types of facilities. And of course, in United States and even West Asian countries have these exigency measures. It's good to see India preparing itself, sir.
India continues to monitor the COVID situation for Delta variants as vaccination rates sustain momentum. And let's take a quick look at markets. Markets fall for the 5th straight day as economic uncertainty looms. It's the Delta variant and fears of shutdown and a rate hike that is, driving the markets lower. Sridharji, we are just putting up the markets numbers, and you can perhaps dwell on those for the week. Take it away, sir. You have the numbers on the screen.
I think we saw the 5th day of losses. The Dow fell by 270 points, S&P by 35 points. Even the tech sector, NASDAQ, fell 132 points. And you saw the oil markets zoom higher. Now they're all in the 70-72 band. The primary reason why the markets fell are the Delta. Delta is uppermost, the rising Delta variant is uppermost in the minds of the people, and the consequences of which being economic shutdown. The second is at the same time, inflation is looming large, which means that there is a possibility for Fed to move forward, move away from the accommodative rates policy, which they foresee a rising rates, rising energy prices, which is a single biggest constituent of one of the biggest constituent of share of the wallet of a consumer is concerned. All this is playing in the minds of the people. And that's why you saw the 5th day of down in the stock indexes. The 10-year bond is also moved up. It's 1.34. It is slowly making its way, but not material as yet. But you can see that there's not a material change in the bond or the Japanese 10-year, but there is a small movement in the US 10-year treasuries. The cryptocurrencies go up and down. Yes, we saw the cryptocurrencies, which was 51,000. It's close to about, the Bitcoin is now around 44, close to 45,000, lost about 10%. Ethereum has also lost about 10%. So roughly, those the crypto markets go up and down, predicated on market volumes rather than anything to do with economic changes that is taking place in the markets.
And that's it for us on this special weekend edition. We'll be back bright and early Monday morning with more daily global insights. Please subscribe and join our membership program. Namaskar and thank you. And Sridhar ji, we'll see you on Monday, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar. Have a good weekend and